going to do tonight is divide up the session into two main parts. One is to hear from our fantastic panelists about how they got into research and innovation. So what their career path was like, what type of career they're in now as a researcher, and what innovation means to them and how that's been part of their work and career. And then I'll ask the panelists to turn to any sort of tips and hints, sharing practical skills and advice on how you might be able to get into research and innovation. So I will give a very brief introduction to our panelists, and then I'm going to ask them to just introduce themselves and give a little bit of a summary of how they got into research and innovation careers. So first, we have Penny Clark, co-founder of Conscious Co-Living.
Really great to be here. My journey into research was quite long in a way. In my undergraduate degree, which I did back in 2007, graduating in 2010, I did English literature, which is not really research related, but I think I've always had an interest in human beings and in communication. I came out of university not knowing too much what I wanted to do. I got a marketing job and I worked in marketing for just under 5 years. All this time I was saving up towards having an adult gap year, but the question always was, what happens when I come back? And I think I spent quite a long time thinking about it and didn't find anything that really inspired me, and I was enjoying marketing. I wasn't super keen on it. I wasn't sure that I wanted to make it a career. And then actually it just so happened that one day on social media, one of my friends shared a video of their 3-minute thesis entry. If people haven't heard of that before, there's something called the 3-minute thesis competition, in which people summarize their PhD into a 3-minute talk, and then they go and perform this and they compete for a prize. The idea is to turn something quite complicated into something short and really compelling. My friend, who was in a very different discipline to a discipline that I would ever be in, she was looking at cancer research. I really felt when I saw it, I think it was a good talk, but I felt very compelled on a personal level by what she was doing. I felt very compelled by the idea of a PhD, and I think what was really appealing to me was this idea of being at the coalface of something, of finding out something new and contributing something unique, and being able to have a role where you're learning, and the point is that you don't know, but you get to be the person who goes and finds out. I really love that idea.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Natalia Sally. I'm currently an engagement manager at HealthWatch Lambeth, and I think my journey in research started even before I went to become a student in Westminster University. That was in 2006 until 2009. So when I was still in the Philippines, newly graduate from College of Social Work in a university, I got interested in child labor research. So I applied as a research assistant in the University of the Philippines, because as a social worker, I think passion is to work with people, but also to understand the issues of people. And there's no other way of doing that but to venture into research and to understand and to talk to people, not just social work or community development. So in my career in the Philippines, before I migrated to the United Kingdom, I was always a social worker, also a teacher in university, and as well as community development. And in all those, I have been doing small pieces of research just to understand people's issues. When I went back to the Philippines, then because of this innovation in making research accessible and using into policy making, I started the One Child, One Tree Foundation in the Philippines, which is also based in research, but is more environmental research. It's research about mangroves and trees and biodiversity.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I was a student at Westminster University. I did my master's in public health. Obviously, that was my second exposure to research. My first experience was my undergraduate research, which was mostly quantitative. But when I did my master's research, this was in public health and nutrition. It was more qualitative research. And also, while being a student at Westminster University, I was involved in various other projects as an intern and as a project assistant. So my research was mostly qualitative in nature. This is the kind of research that brings you in contact with people and you get to ask them questions through people's experiences. So one of the things that I really found fascinating through my experiences was the fact that I could actually carve out my own path and decide what questions I wanted to answer. And specifically with my master's research, I realized from my study that we live in a society where we have policies that kind of direct us on things that we should do or things that are advisable to do. Take, for example, in the health discipline. But then when I did my research, I found out that sometimes there are gaps that there can be recommendations around what people should be doing. But when you come to the practical side of things, if you haven't actually spoken to people to understand the experiences and the day-to-day experiences and challenges that they go through, it might actually not be possible for these policies to be put into practice. So that's what I found interesting, the fact that research actually gave me the opportunity to ask questions and bring out these gaps, inform further policies and inform practice and inform how people live their lives. And from then I had more questions from my master's research, and that's what led me on to my PhD.
The skills that you get from being a researcher in the UK are transferable, and I think if you are originally from other countries, it will also apply to other countries. So because skills are really transferable, I think it's the environment that might be a challenge, where in the UK there are some resources, there are opportunities for funding. When you go to a third world country like the Philippines, there's no funding for research. So I work doubly hard to raise funding, and we do a lot of fundraising. I write so many proposals, and most of them are successful. And this is also very interesting to note, that there are those public or private individuals and organizations who are willing, even in the Philippines, to fund your research, to fund your project.
Yeah, there's a broad range of career paths you can take from research. Academia is just one of those paths. For example, market research, all the scientific research, health research, social research, research and evaluation of policy, even research for TV and entertainment. Think about think tanks, and consultancy is another one. So the company that I'm a part of, we're a consultancy, but actually what really informs our consultancy is research, and from that, content creation.
You could decide to be an information scientist, where your work, your role in an organization or in a company is helping them to find the information they need and managing that information, and that's all part of research. You could be an epidemiologist or a statistician. You could even narrow it down to a specific type of research. For example, if you enjoy qualitative research like I do, you could decide to be a qualitative researcher. And there are always organizations like the NHS and different charities looking for people to come and collect, interview data and analyze this data. You could be a data analyst. So even thinking about companies as well, say for example tech companies or pharmaceutical industries, usually they need people to come and do some sort of research activities for them to test their products or just to assess the need for their products. So there's so much you can do as a researcher, both in academia and in industry.